You're listening to the Red Eye Hour.
Welcome back, everybody. This is JMeeks. This is the Red Eye Hour. I'm glad you're here joining me today. And we got another new solo stories for you. This one is Solo Stories Part 6, and it's called The Family Cabin. I think you guys are really going to like this one. It's pretty interesting. So it takes place in 2010, and the 17-year-old and his family has a mom and dad and sister. His dad suddenly died in the family, and it was a major loss to the family. And the boy's name, by the way, is Brett. This kind of sent ripples and shockwaves through the family because he was just kind of like that patriarch of the family. He was a great husband. He was a great dad. He was a great uncle. He was just a good guy. And so, super major loss for the family. And they were a close family. And one of the most favorite things they liked to do as a family together was go to their favorite cabin, which was in Mount Bachelor, which is in the DeSchutes National Forest, if I'm saying that right. Beautiful place. And decades ago, his dad just had the opportunity through a family opportunity, and they got to build a cabin there in Mount Bachelor in the forest. And it was not just a old cabin that you'd think of, one story, dusty with cobwebs. This was a nice 2-story, A-framed in the front. This was a nice cabin built right into the side of the angle of Mount Bachelor. So this whole area is beautiful. It has forests and rivers and streams and lakes, and there's all kinds of wildlife. They have ski resorts. There's all kinds of things to do, and the family loved going there at different times of the year and enjoying all the activities that the National Forest and that this area had by the cabin. So after the dad passes away and they have the funeral, they're kind of going through the will. Brett was willed his dad's car, which he was excited about. And one of the things they had to decide what to do was what to do with the cabin. The mom and sister were kind of it's a place that it meant so much to dad, and that was kind of a dad memory that now it's just a place that kind of seems like it won't be the same if we go. So the mom and sister really weren't feeling it and didn't really care if they kept it or sold it. The son was kind of mad at first, how could you guys sell the cabin? This is such a big part of our family. We have so many family photos at this place. He didn't understand, but he was trying to, reason and use logic. So he talked to his mom about it, and he said, hey, at least let me go up there and spend some days and take Midnight, the family dog that they had, and kind of just do it for dad. One last thing, one last send off for dad, and kind of go up there and reminisce and pay my respects, and then we can decide what to do. And the mom was like, yeah, that's a great idea. Go up there, spend as many days as you want, do your thing. But when you get back, we are going to sell it. So that was kind of the decision that they came through their conversation. So the day comes, and Brett gets his things. He's loading up the car, his tent, some of his food, he's taking his PlayStation, blankets, pillows, everything he's going to need for the cabin. He did bring one of the little handguns. He decided not to bring any of the other guns because he didn't think he was really in the right state of mind to go hunting, even though him and his dad had gone hunting on the land out there. But just for safety, he thought he'd bring one of the little handguns. Brought a snowboard just in case he wants to go snowboarding. If it does snow, good, because it was still the winter time up there this time of the year when he was going. So he makes the drive, and it's about a 22-mile drive, and then gets to the driveway that leads up to the cabin. It's kind of a winding, gravel, dirt road up to the cabin. Gets up there and getting his stuff unloaded inside, and opening the curtains and getting the place, looking like somebody lives there, and getting settled in, and the dogs running around, sniffing, getting used to the area and the property again. And Brett's kind of looking around and reminiscing in his mind and having all these memories and thoughts flow through his mind about his dad. And, he felt good about it, though. He felt good that he came up here to spend some time. So I guess next we need to talk about the cabin and how it's laid out. So when you pull up to the driveway, it's kind of like if you're standing in front of the cabin, the driveway's like coming off from the left and kind of coming up in front of your view. And the cabin's right here to the front. So there's a big area that they had to clear out in the front yard or the front part of the house. They cleared out a lot of the pine trees because it's really dense forest on the sides and the back of the cabin. They did leave a couple trees, but so the front of the cabin is kind of like an A-frame style, and it has the bottom, which has big panes of glass, and there's a living room area in there with the fireplace, and then in the back, like the kitchenette and all that, and like a bedroom down there and a little bath. And then you have the second level, which is kind of like a loft, and then that's like the master bedroom up there with a bathroom. And it has a balcony that you can, sliding glass doors that open, you walk out, it's a balcony, you can look out to the front of the house and see that clearing. And then there's a tree line about 100 yards out, in front of the house. And then behind that, you can like see the peaks of other little mountain ridges. And it's a picturesque view. It's beautiful. So like I said, there's the side of the cabins that didn't have windows. And then the back, which was kind of built in, like I said, to the side of Mount Bachelor. Up towards the top of the roof, there was one little like rectangular smaller piece of glass, which fed into like the bathroom from that master bedroom on that second story. So in the front of the house where there's the clearing, there's a couple trees that they never cut down. And one of the trees has a branch that kind of grew out weird and went out to the side. And the family used to call it the sitting tree because it looked like it was a huge branch that could look like it could sit multiple people. The thing is, there was really no way to climb up to it, just the way that tree was built. But they called it the sitting tree, and one end of the branch kind of almost looked like form like a seat, it looked like that. And so that's what the family called it. And that had been there the whole time. That was a couple of trees that they did keep in the front clearing of the cabin. And the sitting tree that I'm talking about 20 feet off the ground. So it's a pretty good ways. And this will become important later in the story. So just remember that. So the boy is settled in the cabin. He's got his PlayStation hooked up. He's playing that. He's eating snacks. The dog's roaming around at peace. He's having a good time. It's relaxing. And the first couple of days go great. He takes some walk around the land. Did snowboarding the one day. Took his fishing pole. There's a little stream nearby. Threw in. Actually caught a couple of fish, but threw them back. I mean, he was having a really good time and just reminiscing and paying respects to this place that his dad built and remembering all the great times that he bonded with his dad there. And he was really happy with the decision he made that he went to this cabin. And it's so picturesque and beautiful, and it's just something he really wanted to take in, and it's something that he's going to remember for the rest of his life. So late in the second night, some snow moved in, and it snowed quite a bit, about 1.5 to 2 feet, which up in that area is pretty normal. So Brett gets up the next day and he notices that, and he takes midnight out front so he can do his business, and he's looking and he sees his car covered in snow, and he goes, I don't feel like scooping the snow off the car and then also down the driveway to get me going. He goes, maybe today I'll just stay snowed in and I won't go anywhere and won't trek around. I'll be snowed in for the day. That's what he decided to do. But while he was outside, he saw some footprints in the snow, and they came from way back on the tree line, and they came to the sitting tree, and then they kind of came towards the front of the house, and then made their way around the back. And he didn't think much of it. He wasn't overly concerned, but he was like, huh. And he says, doesn't look like animal tracks. It looks like a person. He goes, well, maybe it was like my neighbor, but they are quite a ways away, and they're older. Maybe it was just somebody lost. He's like, but like I said, he wasn't very overly concerned about it. Because he thought, if it was something important or something going on, somebody would have knocked on the cabin door and tried to get my attention. That didn't happen, so I'm not really going to worry about it. So he went on with his day, stayed in, had a snow day, took a nap, played some more PlayStation, ate snacks, watched TV, just had a good time. Then that night came, and he was getting ready for bed, and he was going around, checking all the windows, making sure they're locked. checked the doors, made sure they were locked. Then they had blackout curtains in this cabin so you could close and make it pretty dark if you wanted to, especially during the day if you wanted to sleep in. So he's sleeping up on the second level where the loft is, in the bed there, and he's in bed and just has a little reading light on. He's looking at his phone and he notices his dog, Midnight, jumps up and is alerted. And he's just standing on the bed first. And then he gets down, he makes his way down the stairs, and he can hear Midnight downstairs on the main level, pacing back and forth, kind of whining, and his attention's at the front door. And for some reason, it kind of made Brett feel unsettled a little bit, but he was like, okay, well, maybe she just needs to go out again, because that's what she's acting like. So Brett gets out of bed, goes downstairs, turns on the little front light and opens the front door and lets Midnight out. And Midnight is out there, but she's not going to the bathroom. She's fixated out there at the sitting tree and kind of to the tree line out there. And she's kind of has a few barks, and she's panting, and she's acting like something's out there. And Brett's looking, and it's pretty dark out there. I mean, they're really remote in this cabin out there at Mount Bachelor, so there's no light, and he didn't bring his flashlight for this situation, letting the dog out. So he's kind of looking, but he doesn't really see anything, and he doesn't hear anything. So he encourages Midnight, do your business. Come on, let's get inside. And as he's getting Midnight inside and closing the door, and kind of takes one look back out there into the clearing and out into the night, and doesn't see anything, but thought it was weird that the dog was acting like that, but shuts the door, locks it, goes around again just for a sanity check, checks everything, and goes upstairs and lays back down. Tries to rest, or at least try to fall asleep. So a little while later, he's awakened by something on the roof of the cabin. And he hears it moving around, and it takes about 6 to 8 steps across the roof. And the dog hears it, the dog's looking up. But the thing is, it doesn't really sound like someone, like a person walking on the roof. It almost sounds like hooves. So he was thinking, could it be like a deer? I mean, or, a moose or something? That would be pretty heavy to be on the roof. And he was thinking, there is tons of wildlife in the DeSchutes National Forest and out at there's Mount Bachelor. There's moose, there's elk, there's deer. There's all kinds of things. So it's a possibility, but really to get on that angle of the roof, you'd have to leap from a tree, and you would definitely, if something did that, you would hear land on the roof. And he didn't hear that. He just was awoken because he started hearing something walking, like it had already been up there. So then the footsteps stop, and then the dog's attention kind of goes towards the balcony door. And Brett's looking over there, and he's like, okay, what's going on here? And Brett's thinking to himself, I consider myself a pretty tough guy. I try to be brave in most situations, but I'm out here, I'm by myself, I'm isolated in the woods. Yeah, I have my dog, yeah, I have a small handgun, but that's it, and I don't know. Something's creeping me out. To be honest with you, I really don't want to know what's out there. So Brett gets a flashlight, he grabs a small handgun, checks it, makes sure it's loaded, and hesitantly he makes his way over to the balcony door, the sliding glass door. He pulls back the curtain slowly, and it's dark out there, so you really can't see anything. You can hardly see the snow that's on the balcony ground, that's there. And he has the flashlight, and they don't have an outside light there on top of the balcony, so that option's not available. So he unlocks it, and he slides it open slowly, and he goes out there, and he shines the flashlight, and he immediately looks back on the roof and shines his flashlight, and he doesn't see any footprints. And he was actually kind of relieved by this. He was like, oh, well, maybe I was imagining it, maybe it was I was hearing something else. It just sounded like that. So he scans the roof, and he hears Midnight below him, kind of moving around and kind of moving his body. And now Midnight is looking out towards the front of the cabin, and out toward that sitting tree, and out toward that tree line. The same place he was fixated on earlier when they went out front. So he's standing there, on the balcony. He has his small handgun in his right hand. He has the flashlight in his left hand, and he's turned around looking at the roof, doing his due diligence. He knows now that the dog is fixated back on the sitting tree, but he wants to do his due diligence, so he's scanning with the flashlight, and it's so dark out there that the beam of the flashlight goes pretty far. So he's scanning, and he's scanning the side of the house, and doesn't see anything, looking on the ground, looking in the trees, and makes it all the way until he's about in front of himself to the front of the cabin, to the clearing where the sitting tree is. Here comes the beam of light, and all of a sudden the beam of light stops on the branch of the sitting tree. And sitting there was like this man, humanoid looking thing, and he was squatted on the branch, and you could tell by where like his feet and his shins came up, like his knees were way up here and went down, so you could tell his like legs were super long, and his hands were stretched over his head, hanging on to a branch above it, and he was staring directly at Brett, right in his eyes, and his mouth was wide open, and he looked hairless, like he didn't have clothes on, and his eyes were like sunken in, but were like bright white where the eyeballs were, and his mouth was gaping open, and he was just looking directly at Brett. And this startled Brett so much in this moment that he like drops the flashlight, and he frantically picks up the flashlight. He has the gun pointed, and shines the flashlight back at the sitting branch, and it's gone. And at this point, this creature was less than 50 yards away from Brett, and he was so startled in that moment he couldn't believe what he saw. Instantly, his heart's beating out of his chest. He grabs Midnight by the collar, and he's dragging him inside, and he's throwing the dog in, and he looks back, and he just decides with the handgun to fire off a couple shots right off towards that area. And he thought, well, maybe whatever it was, the gunshots will scare it off, because sometimes that works with wild animals. They'll get scared off by the gunshots, and he was just hoping maybe that would happen. And he closes the sliding glass door, locks it, pulls the blackout curtains, and he goes back over to the bed, and he's breathing heavy. His heart's beating out of his chest. He's shaking a little bit. Even the dog now does not want to go outside or wants to go downstairs and check anything out. He's like sitting beside, leaning up against Brett, acting scared himself. And he's sitting there on the bed, and he's trying to think back through what just happened, and he's thinking to himself, what did I see? Did I really see this? Was that even human? It was just sitting there with its mouth open, just staring at me. And was that the same thing that was on the roof? Was there ever anything on the roof? He was just having all these thoughts go through his head, and he's trying to be logical, and he's trying to rationalize, but he knows what he just saw with his own eyes, and he's just, it's got him spooked. It's got him spooked. So he takes a few deep breaths, trying to calm down. Going, okay, door's locked. I'll go back downstairs. I'll check the front door. I'll check the windows. I'll do my sanity check. I'll make sure everything's okay. I haven't heard anything. Maybe the gunshot scared it off. We're probably good. Just a good scare. So he does all that. Midnight, the dog stays right beside him the whole time. Gets back in bed, lays down, turns off the lights, and tries to go to sleep. And he's trying to just ward off those paranoia and his imagination running wild, but still, he still knows what he saw, and that something wasn't right. But trying to get that out of his mind, at least try to get some rest, because it's still pretty early in the night. So right about as Brett starts to doze off, he hears a tap. And then he hears another tap, and the tapping continues. And it's coming from the front door of the cabin, and there's a piece of glass on the front of the door there, and it's like a single finger is tapping at the front door. And his heart just sinks in his chest. And he was like, what the fuck is that? And then the tapping stops. And then he can hear, because it's so quiet and he's not moving, he can hear footsteps making their way to the side of the cabin. And then there's tapping on the side of the cabin, but it's a little harder. Like maybe whatever this is doing it with its fist and not a finger. So it's more like and this keeps happening on the side. And then that tapping stops. And then he hears more footsteps. And then the next thing you know, he hears tapping. The light sound of tapping again with one single finger. And it's on that back side of the cabin that I talked about earlier with that little rectangle window that looks into the master bathroom. And there's a single finger tapping on it. Now this bathroom is just on the other side of the wall where Brett's currently sitting at. So we're talking about like 6-10 feet away. It's close. And it's making the hair on the back of his neck stand up. The tapping stops again. He hears footsteps. And he's thinking to himself, this thing is making its way around the cabin 360 degrees. And it does. It goes to the other side of the cabin. And it's banging on the side. And it bangs for a while, then it stops. Then he hears footsteps again. It makes its way to the front door. And taps again. Very unsettling. And then the tapping at the front door stopped. And it stopped for a few minutes. And he thought, okay, maybe it's done. And then his worst nightmares came true. And all of a sudden he hears something. And his head turns. And he looks toward the balcony where the sliding glass door is. And he hears tapping outside the balcony sliding glass door, which is right there. So the boy's sitting there looking. He goes, behind some blackout curtains and a pane of glass, this thing is out there that I'm not sure what it is. If it's a man or if it's humanoid or if it's a creature, I don't know. But this all feels wrong. And this tapping happened for a while. And he was thinking to himself, all these scenarios. I could take my handgun, I could just start blasting away at the sliding glass doors and would break the glass, and maybe I could kill this creature. But what if I did that and I missed, or it got away, and then I'd have a, broken glass sliding door, and, then I'd have that situation to deal with. He just wasn't sure and not confident enough with a plan to go out there and start shooting this thing, because he wasn't sure what it was. Then the tapping stopped on the balcony. All of a sudden, above him, directly over him on the roof, it's knocking on the roof right above him. And this knocking went on for hours and hours, and eventually the sun came up. At this point, Brett hasn't slept all night. He was scared. He didn't know what the hell was going on. But he finally said, okay, I'm going to go onto this balcony. I'm going to check what's going on. It's daytime. If whatever's still out here around the cabin, at least I can see good. And if I have a clear shot and if it's a threat, I can shoot it and I can take care of this problem. So he opens the blackout curtains, unlocks the sliding glass door, opens it, and he can see these footprints all over the balcony, like something was just pacing around all night long. And he goes out there and he turns around and looks onto the roof of the cabin, and he can see footprints all over. And this thing just paced around wherever it was. And he went over to the edge there and looked over, and you could see all around the house just multiple tracks as this thing stalked him all night long around the cabin. And then he saw the footsteps go back out to the sitting tree and then go off back into that line of trees that was like 100 yards away, back into the dense forest. So Brett decided to pack up all his things, and that's what he did, and he headed home, and he never looked back. And he told his mom, you can sell the cabin. I never want to go back out there. I'm glad I did, and for Dad and everything, but it's okay. Please sell it. I am fine with it. So the family sold it, and Brett kind of just kept that to himself for the rest of his life, what happened to him out at the family cabin. So that's the end, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for listening to the story. I hope you enjoyed it. That was Solo Stories, Part 6, The Family Cabin. Again, I appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out with me. This is JMeeks, and this is the Red Eye Hour, and we'll see you later. Goodbye.
Thanks for flying with the Red Eye Hour.